I suggest to you that the reason that people are listening is because you are articulating their pain, and that the fact is that millions of black Americans are suffering and are feeling pain, and you are standing up in front of them and saying, I hear you, and I'm a voice for your concerns. What I'm raising is that is it possible, and this is not just my reflection, is it possible that there's a much more positive contribution that a man of your skills and gifts could make?
The most positive contribution that I can make to this society is to remove the veil of hypocrisy and falsehood from the way we deal with each other. We're already separate. We're already weakened.
Right.
We're a permanent underclass according to the way they characterize us. Sir, just a minute. Our own people and our leaders are not putting forth a solution to the problem. Yes, the most positive thing that I could do is say to the government, look, don't kill us off. If you don't want us, let us go. You have found a way to create a state for the Jews because the Jews were suffering all over the world. You took land from the Palestinians, gave them a state, supported them in that state for 40 years to the tune of $2, $3, and $4 billion a year. Fine. The taxpayers' money supported that. Whether the taxpayers knew it or not, the Congress made it possible for Israel to get that kind of support. But the people in Israel didn't build this country. The Israelis did not build this society. It was built on the backs of black people whose slave labor for 300 years contributed to this development. We fought in all of the wars that America has had. We fought in the Civil War on both sides of the war. Yet, when it was over and the Emancipation Proclamation was given, we were not given the knowledge to go for ourselves. So instead of our being involuntary servants, we became voluntary. We fought against the Japanese and the Germans. Japan is a world leader today. The Germans are being reunited, and the fear is that their reunification will make Germany once again the strongest, most powerful economic and political force in Europe. Here the blacks are, who have been in America for a little over 400 years. We have nothing to show for our labor and our lives. So mine is an appeal, sir. Don't deal hypocritically with black people. Now, sir, here's what we suggest. Look, we feel that reparations were given to the Jews by the Germans for that Holocaust. East Germany has to recognize the need for a repairing of the damage in order for Israel and East Germany to have relations. Here, America recognizes a debt owed to the Japanese who were in concentration camps for 4 years. I plead with the government of the United States, do you recognize the contribution that we have made to this society? We can't continue to live with poor housing and poverty and nakedness, squalor and want and disease in a land of plenty. And if you don't want to reconcile the differences between black and white, then if you will give us reparations for what slave labor built, then let us go and build a society of our own. Now, I'd like to suggest we got 600,000 men in prison. America was built by England's letting out the convicts. America has to pay from $15,000 to $25,000, some say as much as $32,000 a year per inmate. They're trying to build new prison facilities. Some estimates say each cell or unit will cost from $50,000 to $100,000. Here we are, the natural kith and kin of our brothers and sisters in Africa. Please let me just say this, and then we can argue whether this separation is valid. I would like to ask the Organization of African Unity to set aside some territory in Africa that is fertile, that is minerally rich. There are millions of miles and acres of land in Africa unused and undeveloped. We in America have the greatest blessing of all. We grew up in this great land. We had the blessing of education. We now are some of the most brilliant black people anywhere to be found on the earth. Many of us don't have jobs. Why not take these brilliant ones, release the prisoners? Since we have a record of reforming them, let them work off their time, building a new reality somewhere else if we can't build it here. Give us dual citizenship like you gave it to the Jews so we can come back and forth across the Atlantic. And let me be free to teach our people. And at the end of a certain period of time, let black people vote as to whether we want to stay or go. And those who wish to go, let them go and help them build a new reality and give these that stay the justice of reparations. And then America will go down in history, not as a nation that is embarrassed by the masses of blacks being in this condition, but a nation who ultimately recognize that there is a better solution than fooling the people, deceiving them as the problem gets worse. I close, Mr. Rose, in my appeal to the American public, to the government. Do you remember the Titanic? A great ship, a ship that was supposed to be unsinkable, filled with the creme de la creme of America and Europe. 1,000 workers, 2,500 passengers. And in the black of the night, not heeding a warning that laid on the floor, we don't want to hear that. This ship is unsinkable. And an iceberg coming up out of the water, as black as the water itself, crushed that ship. And within a few hours, that ship and most of its passengers went to the bottom of the sea. Should that be the future of this nation that everybody thinks is unsinkable? She can't go down. But there is a segment of the black population in this country that is the Achilles heel of this nation. And if something is not done in a proper way, maybe America will go the way of Pharaoh in Egypt and Rome and Babylon. And I, for one, would not like to see this great ship of state go down like that.
I've got to get some questions in. And one question is, are you asking for $30 billion in reparations now and asking some country in Africa to give you this fertile land so that you can go do this? Is that the point you are right now? Or are you holding that out as simply the last resort?
I think if everything else has failed, and it has, we ought to try something.
It's time to do that now.
I think so. And I think, sir, just to say 30 billion or 100 billion, I don't think we need to throw around figures, but I think we need to sit down and see what it would take to repair the damage. But look, suppose the prisons were emptied out. And like your Statue of Liberty said, give us the tide, the poor blacks, the huddled masses that are yearning to breathe free.
No one can argue about the message that you have that's getting through to a lot of poor Americans, getting through to them. And also no one can argue about the work that you've done in Washington at Mayfair Mansion, where they had a drug problem. And because of some of your colleagues, that drug problem has been eliminated. It's a fact.